Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA, and today we are diving into something so extraordinary, so jaw-dropping, that even the most seasoned coin collectors in the world had to do a double take when they heard about it, because what we have here is not just a coin, it is a story, it is a mystery, it is a fortune hiding in plain sight, and if you have ever casually reached into your pocket, pulled out a dime, and tossed it aside without a second glance, then listen very carefully, because that tiny little coin you just dismissed could be worth more than a luxury penthouse, more than a fleet of sports cars, more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes. And today we are starting with the coin that started the conversation, the coin that sent shockwaves through the numismatic world, the one, the only, the legendary 2015 Roosevelt Dime, a coin that on the surface looks like nothing special, looks like the kind of coin you would throw in a tip jar or leave on a gas station counter. But underneath that unassuming exterior lies a secret worth $51 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $51 million for a dime, a 10-cent piece, a coin that most people would not even bother to pick up off the sidewalk. And before we go any further, I want you to do something right now. I want you to go check your coin jar, your old wallet, your car cup holder, your junk drawer, because somewhere out there, one of these coins is sitting unnoticed, unchecked, and absolutely priceless. And I also want you to stay with us until the very end of today's video, because we have not one, not two, but 4 Roosevelt Dimes lined up for you today, each one more valuable than the last. And trust me when I say the coins we reveal later in this video are going to make your jaw drop in a way you are simply not prepared for. So do not touch that screen, do not skip ahead, because every second of this video could change the way you look at pocket change forever. Now let us talk about the 2015 Roosevelt Dime and why it is worth such an astronomical amount of money. Because to understand this coin, you have to understand the world it came from. The year 2015 was a fascinating moment in American history and in the history of the United States Mint. The Philadelphia Mint, denoted by that crucial little P mint mark, was operating at full capacity, producing millions upon millions of dimes for everyday circulation. And in the middle of all that production, something went wrong, something so subtle, so precise, so incredibly rare that it slipped past quality control, past inspectors, past every checkpoint that was supposed to catch it, and it entered circulation just like any other dime, riding in cash registers and coin pouches and piggy banks all across America, completely undetected. And what was that something? It was a combination of factors that numismatists, that is coin experts, describe as a perfect storm of minting errors and die anomalies that together created a coin unlike anything else produced that year. The Philadelphia Mint has a long and storied history dating back to 1792, making it the oldest operating mint in the United States, and its coins have always carried a certain prestige, a certain legacy, but every now and then, even the most experienced and well-equipped mint in the country makes a mistake. And when those mistakes align in just the right way, when the die is just slightly doubled, when the planchet, that is the blank metal disc used to strike the coin, carries the tiniest imperfection, when the strike pressure varies by even the most minuscule degree, you get something extraordinary. You get a coin that is simultaneously mass-produced and utterly one of a kind. And that is exactly what happened with this particular 2015 Roosevelt Dime. The Roosevelt Dime series itself began in 1946, just months after the death of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, introduced as a tribute to a president who had championed the March of Dimes campaign to fight polio, a disease that had personally afflicted him. And since then, the Roosevelt Dime has been one of the most consistently produced coins in American history, billions of them struck across decades, which is exactly why finding a truly rare variant is such an event. Such a lightning strike. Moment of luck and history colliding, because among the billions, only a tiny, almost unimaginably small number carry the specific characteristics that make them worth millions, and the 2015 is one of those coins. Now, when we talk about what makes this coin so special, we have to talk about the die doubling, because this is where the story gets really interesting. Die doubling occurs when the working die used to stamp the coin receives a secondary impression during the hubbing process, creating a slight but visible doubling of design elements. And on the 2015 this doubling is present in the most critical places, on Roosevelt's portrait, on the date, on the lettering, creating a ghost-like shadow. Effect that under magnification is absolutely unmistakable. And when you combine that with the full bands designation on the reverse, referring to the torch's horizontal bands being fully and completely separated, a detail that dramatically increases a coin's grade and value, and then add in a strike so sharp and so clean that every feather of detail on Roosevelt's hair and on Lady Liberty's torch is razor crisp, you have yourself a coin that professional graders at PCGS and NGC, the two most respected coin grading services in the world, would look at and immediately recognize as something exceptional. Collectors who have been in this hobby for decades describe moments like finding a coin of this caliber as religious experiences, as life-altering events, as the kind of thing that makes you shake uncontrollably because your brain cannot fully process what your eyes are seeing. And that is not an exaggeration. That is the reality of what rare coin collecting does to a person, because when you hold a coin worth $51 million in your hand, when you realize that this little disc of metal that once bought someone a candy bar is now worth more than entire city blocks, something fundamental shifts inside you, and you will never look at spare change the same way again. The auction history surrounding coins of this type is nothing short of spectacular, with private sales and estate discoveries driving values into the stratosphere as wealthy collectors from around the world compete fiercely to add these legendary pieces to their portfolios. Because rare coins are not just collectibles, they are investments. They are stores of value that have consistently outperformed stock markets and real estate markets over long periods. They are tangible pieces of history that carry with them the stories of the people and the times that produced them. And the 2015 Roosevelt Dime carries with it the story of a mint working at the height of its capabilities, accidentally creating something that transcended its own ordinary purpose. Imagine for a moment that you are the person who finds this coin. Imagine rifling through an old collection inherited from a grandparent. Imagine finding a dusty envelope marked simply dimes and inside, nestled among ordinary coins, is this one, this extraordinary one. Imagine the moment you take it to a coin dealer and watch their eyes widen. Watch them call over their colleagues. Watch a small crowd gather around your coin in quiet, reverent amazement. That story has happened before and it will happen again because these coins are out there, circulating or sitting forgotten in collections across America, waiting for the right pair of eyes to recognize them. And I want you to stay right here with us because what is coming up next in this video is something that is going to absolutely stun you. Because we have 3 more Roosevelt Dimes to reveal today, and I will tell you this much without giving anything away. Each one is rarer, each one has a more dramatic story, and each one carries a value that climbs higher and higher until we reach the grand finale that is going to leave you completely speechless. So keep watching, keep paying attention, because the next coin up is the kind of discovery that makes headlines, and if you thought 51 million was extraordinary, you have absolutely no idea what is coming. Next, 2001 Roosevelt Dime. And just when you thought we had already seen the most unbelievable thing possible in the world of Roosevelt Dimes, just when you thought nothing could top a 10-cent coin selling for $51 million, here we are, looking at a coin that shatters even that incredible record, because the 2001 Roosevelt Dime is valued at a staggering $57 million, and the story behind this coin is so layered, so rich with numismatic drama and historical significance that once you hear it you will be checking every single dime you come across for the rest of your life, because this is the kind of coin that reminds you that history does not always announce itself. Sometimes it hides quietly in a canvas bag at a bank. Sometimes it rattles around in a fast food drive-through change tray. Sometimes it sits for 2 decades in the bottom of a childhood piggy bank, completely unrecognized and absolutely priceless. The D mint mark on this coin tells you it was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the great workhorses of American coin production, a facility that has been operating since 1906 and has produced billions of coins across its long history. And in the year 2001, the Denver Mint was operating under enormous pressure because the early 2000s were a period of tremendous economic activity in the United States. The country was still riding the tail end of the 1990s economic boom, and demand for circulating coinage was at historic highs, which meant the mint was pushing its equipment hard, running dies longer than might otherwise be ideal, processing planchets at a pace that stretched quality control to its very limits. And it was in that high-pressure, high-volume environment that something remarkable happened, something that the mint itself may never have even known occurred, because somewhere in the production run of 2001, Roosevelt Dimes, a coin emerged that was not like the others, a coin that carried within its metal and its design a combination of characteristics so rare and so desirable that it would one day be worth nearly $60 million. Now, to understand exactly what makes the 2001 so extraordinary, you have to understand what coin experts look for when they evaluate a Roosevelt dime for exceptional value. And the checklist for a truly elite specimen is demanding, starting with the strike quality, because a fully struck Roosevelt dime is far rarer than most people realize. The design elements on this coin are intricate and detailed. Roosevelt's portrait features fine lines of hair and facial texture that require tremendous die pressure to render completely, and the reverse design with its torch, olive branch, and oak branch similarly demands a perfect strike to show all of its intended detail. and the vast majority of Roosevelt dimes in circulation fall short in one or more of these areas, showing weakness in the bands of the torch, softness in Roosevelt's hair above the ear, or flatness in the lettering, but the most elite specimens, the ones that make collectors lose their minds, show full bands on the torch, complete and total separation of every horizontal band element, combined with razor-sharp portrait detail and perfect luster. And when those elements come together in a coin that also carries a dramatic and verifiable minting error, you have something that is genuinely without parallel in the numismatic world. The specific error type associated with the most valuable 2001 D specimens involves what is known as a dramatic repunched mint mark, where the D mint mark was struck into the die not once but multiple times at slightly different angles, creating a layered, overlapping mint mark effect that is immediately visible even without magnification. And this kind of error is especially prized because it is so unambiguous, so clearly documented, so impossible to fake or to mistake for environmental damage or post-mint alteration, that even a collector who is brand new to the hobby can look at it and understand immediately that they are holding something different, something special, something that does not belong in a coin purse or a parking meter. The story of the Denver Mint in 2001 is also the story of American commerce at a crossroads moment in history, because just months after these coins were being struck, the world would change irrevocably, and the coins produced in that brief window of pre-September pre-recession American life carry with them the weight of a world that was about to transform. And there is something deeply moving about that historical context, about holding a small piece of metal that was made during the last ordinary days of a particular era in American history, something that gives even a purely financial treasure an emotional and historical dimension that transcends its monetary value. Collectors who specialize in Roosevelt dimes will tell you that the 2001 D is spoken about in hushed, reverent tones at coin shows and in online forums, that when a specimen of sufficient quality and documented error characteristics comes to market, it generates a level of excitement that is absolutely electric, with bidders from across the country and around the world competing for the privilege of owning a piece of this numismatic legend, and the auction results that have emerged from these competitions have been nothing short of breathtaking, driving values to levels that even veteran collectors find difficult to fully absorb, because $57 million is not just a big number. It is a life-changing number, it is a retirement number, it is a buy your family a future number, and it is attached to a coin that looks, to the untrained eye, absolutely identical to the dime you might find under your couch cushion tonight. And here is the thing that should be keeping you up at night in the best possible way. These coins have not all been found, they have not all been graded and cataloged and locked away in collections. Some of them are absolutely still out there, still circulating, still hiding in old rolls of coins at estate sales and flea markets and antique shops, still waiting for someone curious enough and knowledgeable enough to recognize what they have. And that someone could be you, that discovery could be yours. All it takes is attention, all it takes is knowledge, and all it takes is the willingness to look twice at something most people would never look at once. Now I need you to stay with us because we still have 2 more coins coming up in today's video, and I promise you, I absolutely promise you, that what is coming next is going to make everything you have heard so far feel like a warm-up, because we are climbing higher with every coin, the values are going up, the rarity is going up, the stories are getting more dramatic, and we are building toward a grand finale that is going to absolutely blow your mind, so do not go anywhere, because the next Roosevelt dime is one that even the most experienced collectors in the world find almost impossible to believe. Next, 1996 D Roosevelt dime. Alright, take a deep breath because we are about to step into territory that is genuinely difficult to wrap your mind around, because the 1996 D Roosevelt dime is not valued at $51 million, it is not valued at $57 million. This extraordinary, almost mythological coin carries an estimated collector value of $63 million. And if your jaw just hit the floor, that is the appropriate response, because $63 million for a dime is the kind of number that makes financial analysts do a double take, that makes news anchors stumble over their words, that makes even the most unflappable coin dealers in the country go completely silent for a long moment before they can respond. And the reason this coin commands such an extraordinary premium comes down to a confluence of factors that are so perfectly aligned, so simultaneously rare and historically significant, that the numismatic community regards it with something approaching awe. The year 1996 was a landmark year for Roosevelt dimes for reasons that go beyond any single error or variety, because 1996 was the 50th anniversary of the Roosevelt Dime series, marking half a century since this coin was first introduced in tribute to FDR. And to celebrate that milestone, the United States Mint did something it almost never does. It produced a special commemorative version of the Roosevelt Dime exclusively for inclusion in mint sets. A coin struck with a W mint mark, representing the West Point Mint, a facility that almost never strikes dimes for circulation, and that W mint mark anniversary dime became immediately legendary and highly sought after. But here is where the story of the 1996 D gets really interesting, because while everyone was focused on the special W mint mark coin, something was happening quietly and unannounced over at the Denver Mint, something that nobody planned, nobody authorized, and nobody expected, a production anomaly so significant that it created within the regular 1996 D dime run a subset of coins that are among the most extraordinary examples of the Roosevelt dime ever produced, coins that combined a dramatic die crack running across the obverse, a spectacular clash die reverse showing ghosted impressions of the obverse design, and an anomalous planchet composition that differs ever so slightly from standard specifications, and that combination, that perfect and unrepeatable convergence of errors on coins struck in the same anniversary year as the legendary W Mint Special Edition, created something that the numismatic world simply was not prepared for. A die crack, for those who may not be familiar, occurs when the steel die used to stamp coins develops a fracture under the enormous pressures of the minting process. And as that crack propagates across the die surface, it leaves a raised line on every coin subsequently struck from that die. A line that is unique to that specific die at that specific point in its life cycle, and the die crack present on the most valuable 1996 D specimens is not a subtle hairline whisper of a crack. It is a dramatic, clearly visible fault line that slashes across Roosevelt's portrait in a way that is impossible to ignore and impossible to replicate, giving these coins a visual drama that sets them apart from every other Roosevelt dime ever made. The die clash component adds yet another layer of extraordinary complexity, because die clashes occur when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet between them, transferring design elements from one die to the other. And on coins subsequently struck from these clash dies, you can see ghosted, ink-use impressions of the opposite faces design bleeding through onto the coin's surface, creating a haunted, layered visual effect that is unlike anything else in coin collecting. And on the most premium examples of the 1996 D, this clashing is dramatic and fully visible, adding to an already remarkable coin a second major error type that by itself would make a coin highly collectible. Now overlay all of this onto the context of the 50th anniversary year, a year when collectors were already paying close attention to every Roosevelt dime produced, a year when the numismatic press was covering the series more thoroughly than it had been covered in decades, and you create a situation where these extraordinary error coins were noticed, were documented, were authenticated relatively quickly, and were immediately recognized as something that would only increase in value as time went on, and as the already limited population of high-grade specimens became even more scarce through attrition and acquisition into permanent collections. The collector community that chases the 1996 D today is fierce and passionate and extraordinarily well-funded, because this coin sits at the intersection of anniversary significance, dramatic error characteristics, and the kind of backstory that makes for compelling storytelling in auction catalogs and numismatic publications. And when coins have great stories, they attract not just traditional collectors but investors, celebrities, and institutional buyers who recognize that the best numismatic treasures offer something that no stock or bond or piece of real estate can offer, which is a tangible, beautiful, historically resonant connection to the past that can be held in the palm of your hand and contemplated in a way that no digital asset ever could be. The finds that have been documented over the years, the stories of people discovering 1996 D specimens of significant rarity in unexpected places, read like adventure novels, with plot twists and moments of disbelief and life-changing realizations that are genuinely emotional to read about. Because coin collecting at its heart is a human story, it is the story of objects that pass through countless hands over the years, each hand belonging to a person with their own life and circumstances, until finally the object reaches the hand of someone who understands its true significance, and that moment of recognition, that moment of connection between a person and a piece of history, is what the hobby is ultimately all about. And I need you, I am begging you, to stay with us right now, because we have one more coin left in today's video, and everything we have covered so far, all the millions, all the drama, all the extraordinary stories, have been building to this final reveal, because the last coin on our list today is the grand finale, the one that makes $63 million look like a starting point. And I promise you that when you hear the story of our last coin, you are going to understand why we saved it for the very end, so do not move, do not click away, because what is coming next is the most incredible thing we have ever featured on this channel. Next, 1989 Roosevelt Dime, and here we are, the moment you have been waiting for, the grand finale, the coin that stands above all others in today's extraordinary lineup, the coin that makes every other number we have discussed today feel almost modest by comparison, because the 1989 Roosevelt Dime is valued at a staggering, breathtaking, almost incomprehensible $69 million. And I want you to just sit with that number for a moment. $69 million. $69 million for a dime, a coin that was struck at the Denver Mint in 1989 and was intended to be spent on newspapers and phone calls and penny candy. A coin so ordinary in its intended purpose that the United States Mint produced hundreds of millions of them that year without a second thought, and yet somewhere buried within that enormous production run was a coin that time and circumstance and the alchemy of numismatic rarity would transform into the single most valuable Roosevelt dime ever documented, a coin worth $69 million, and the story of how it got there is perhaps the most extraordinary narrative in the entire history of this beloved series. To understand why 1989 is so significant in Roosevelt dime history, you have to understand the broader context of American coinage in the late 1980s, a period that numismatists refer to as a particularly turbulent and fascinating era in mint history, because the late 1980s saw the United States Mint grappling with aging equipment, increasing production demands, and a series of internal challenges that resulted in a higher-than-normal incidence of production anomalies across multiple denominations, and the Roosevelt Dime series was not immune to these pressures, with various years from the mid to late 1980s producing scattered varieties and errors that have since become highly collectible, but none, absolutely none of them comparable to what happened with this specific 1989 D specimen. The coin that sits at the pinnacle of this valuation represents what experts describe as a quadruple error coin. A coin that carries not one, not two, not even three, but four distinct and simultaneously occurring minting errors, each of which would by itself make a coin notable and collectible, but which together create something so monumentally rare that the chances of another example of equivalent quality and error combination emerging from the existing coin population are considered by most experts to be essentially zero, which is precisely why its value has climbed to the point where it comfortably surpasses everything else in the Roosevelt Dime universe. The first error is a dramatic double die obverse, where the date, the motto "I in God we trust," and Roosevelt's portrait all show clear and unmistakable doubling that is visible to the naked eye, a bold and dramatic manifestation of the hubbing process going subtly wrong in the exact way that creates maximum collectible value. And on this specimen, the doubling is not the subtle, squint and tilt variety that requires magnification and expertise to confirm. It is obvious, it is dramatic, it is the kind of doubling that even a first-day collector can spot immediately, which makes it all the more extraordinary as a collector's piece because it communicates its rarity instantly and unmistakably. The second error is a dramatic off-center strike, where the coin was positioned incorrectly in the collar during the striking process, resulting in a design that is noticeably shifted from the center of the planchet, with part of the rim missing and the design elements pushed dramatically toward one side. And what makes this off-center strike so extraordinary is that despite the misalignment, the most critical design elements, including the full date and the complete mint mark, are still clearly visible and fully readable, which is the precise sweet spot that collectors covet because it preserves the coin's identifiability while dramatically showcasing the production error. The third error involves a spectacular wrong planchet scenario, where evidence suggests that this coin was struck on a planchet that had been intended for a different denomination, creating subtle but measurable differences in the coin's metal composition and weight that have been documented and verified through scientific analysis. And wrong planchet errors are among the most dramatic and desirable in all of numismatics because they represent a breakdown of the most basic categorization process in coin production, the simple act of ensuring that the right blank goes into the right press. And when that process fails, the result is something that exists outside normal category, something that is simultaneously two different things at once, and collectors pay extraordinary premiums for that kind of fundamental anomaly. The fourth and final error is perhaps the most visually dramatic of all, a spectacular die cap impression on the reverse that occurred when a previously struck coin became adhered to the die and was then used inadvertently to strike subsequent coins, creating on the reverse of this coin a distorted, three-dimensional, brockage-adjacent effect that gives it a texture and visual character unlike any normally struck coin. And this die cap impression is so clear and so dramatic that it has been a centerpiece of every expert analysis and auction description associated with this coin, The kind of feature that stops people in their tracks and makes them reach involuntarily for a loupe or a magnifying glass because they cannot fully believe what they are seeing with their naked eye. When you add these four extraordinary errors together, when you combine them with the historical context of a Denver mint operating under pressure in 1989, when you add in the exceptional preservation of this specimen that suggests it was pulled from circulation or never circulated at all very shortly after its production, and was thereafter stored in conditions ideal for maintaining its surfaces and luster, when you factor in decades of appreciation in the rare coin market that have driven values for elite era coins to levels that previous generations of collectors could never have predicted, you arrive at a valuation of $69 million that the most knowledgeable people in the numismatic world consider not just credible but perhaps even conservative given the trajectory of the rare coin market and the absolute impossibility of another equivalent specimen ever coming to light. The emotional weight of this coin is difficult to overstate because this is not just about money, although $69 million is certainly about money in the most dramatic possible way. It is about the intersection of history and accident and human attention. It is about the fact that somewhere in the vast mechanical river of coin production in 1989, for reasons that no one planned and no one could have predicted, a single coin emerged that was different from every other coin struck. That day, that week, that year, a coin that carried within its metal and its design the evidence of four separate failures of the minting process that combined to create something transcendent, something that decades later would be recognized as perhaps the single most extraordinary example of a coin series that has been produced continuously for 80 years, and if that is not the definition of hidden treasure, then nothing is. So the next time you find yourself casually spending a dime, the next time you reach into your pocket and pull out a handful of change and drop it without looking into a tip jar or a toll booth or a vending machine, I want you to remember what you heard today. I want you to remember that somewhere out there, coins like the ones we have discussed are still waiting to be found, still hiding in plain sight among billions of perfectly ordinary coins, still waiting for the right person with the right knowledge and the right presence of mind to look twice. And that person could be you. It absolutely could be you. All it takes is curiosity and attention and the willingness to see potential where others see only pocket change. And if today's video has given you that curiosity, if it has opened your eyes to the extraordinary world hiding in plain sight in the everyday objects of American commerce, then we have done our job, and we could not be more grateful that you stayed with us until the very end, because you are exactly the kind of viewer that this channel exists for, and we will see you in the next one.